Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
The relationship between the brothers is really entertaining to watch, and it's a good music documentary, but I wasn't an Oasis fan in terms of the Britpop bands I used to like.
Who are your Britpop bands then?
My Britpop bands were Pulp and Kaniki were my main two. So yeah, so they were who I liked at the time. So the footage of Oasis I never find sort of electrifying in the way that I would like if it was a documentary about Prince and you had footage of Prince and I'd watch it again and again. But so yeah, but it's still, it's still solid.
Hello everyone, joining Flixwatcher today we have Rich.
Hello.
Kat.
Hey.
And Kobe.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about Oasis Supersonic.
Thank you, as always, to Mighty People for their mighty, mighty tunes that you can hear right now. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for editing our podcast. Please do remember to head over to Spotify and or Apple Podcasts to give us a 5-star rating and a massively glowing review, because it really does help us. And also join in conversation with us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod or on Instagram at Flixwatcher.
Hello film fans, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Our guests today are Kat and Rich. Over to you please, Rich, to say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hello, I'm Rich, and with Kat we host a podcast called Don't You Want Me, which is all about relationships in film, be it romantic, friendships, family, work colleagues, all sorts. We've done films from Barbie to Top Gun to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and yeah, we like to look at some of those kind of intriguing ones, the dysfunctional ones, and those that we try and get some gold out of those as well. We also did Love Actually, just because we're gluttons for punishment and we tried to do as many as we could in one go.
You just did all the relationships in Love Actually, did you?
Yeah, we kind of did. I think we went through, we tried to keep really good with time on our episodes, and that one ended up being about 2 hours because we just went into some of them. And
there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I mean, I spent enough time talking about was that Liam Neeson's descent into sort of mid-budget European action revenge movies, but films like that, we have a lot of fun with.
Well, we're here today to talk about Supersonic, which features a very core, very strong, very potent relationship in the middle of it. So maybe you can bring us some of your Don't You Want Me podcast expertise into this. Kat, you chose this. Can you tell us first of all... No, sorry, Kat, also introduce yourself, but then do tell us why you chose this film and then the synopsis for it as well.
I'm Kat. I co-host the Don't You Want Me podcast with Rich. And as you say, Kobe, I think that this documentary has at the centre of it such a entertaining and funny relationship between the two brothers, and it's endlessly watchable. And this is the thing, if you're around my age and you were living in Britain in the mid-90s, the music of Oasis is embedded in your psyche like a massive splinter that you can't eke out even with the biggest of tweezers. So to watch it in that way is quite cathartic because, it makes you relive how you were feeling at the time, for better or for worse. And another big reason that I chose it is because my co-host here was at Knebworth. So
okay.
I thought that would be quite an interesting thing to dive into. So,
okay, well, with that, Kat, are you ready for your 60 seconds of fame for your synopsis?
So the Gallagher brothers are born, sign a record deal, and, as a consequence, live forever.
Love it.
Okay, good. I like it. 4 seconds.
I think it's the shortest.
It's got to be the shortest. Is there a prize, Helen, for the shortest synopsis?
I don't know. Maybe
I hope so.
Remember when they used to do the omelette challenge on that Saturday morning programme, and they used to the fastest
Saturday morning
omelette.
kitchen.
Yeah.
Do they still do it?
I have no idea. I don't watch TV anymore. But yeah, maybe we should.
I'll
have
accept an omelette pan.
Or an omelette made in 3 seconds.
Oh, fantastic. I'd love it.
Okay, Rich, tell us about Knebworth.
Oh, 1996, the summer we'd had.
First of all, where are you from?
I'm from North London, so again.
Okay, why weren't you supporting Blur?
Don't know. I didn't really get into Blur until afterwards. I think it's hard to know. I think my friends were kind of into Oasis, and that was kind of my big. I grew up really kind of more into Manchester music anyway, so like Joy Division, New Order, Stone Roses, that kind of stuff. So this felt like a natural progression from there. And I don't think really appreciated Blur until a little bit later. So I was very much Oasis, and we're talking about the summer of '96.
Yeah,
had a lot going on. Euro '96 as well, and
Jules Rimet still gleaming.
I remember queuing up to get the tickets.
30 years of hurt.
It still is. I think it's 50 something now. Isn't
it?
And we had, I remember queuing up for tickets on it's like a Saturday morning at 5 a.m. outside the Astoria, RIP. And getting up there. And I went to school in Hertfordshire as well, so it's actually not far from where I went to school. And all I really remember was the amazing support acts. Oasis came out.
Prodigy.
I got the worst sunburn I ever had being at the sun.
Were you there on the Prodigy day?
Prodigy, Ocean Colour Scene. Yeah, that was the Saturday I was there. The Manics, Bootleg Beatles, and the Chemical Brothers as well. And all that for £25.
Was that how much it was?
Wow.
How do you even remember that price?
£25, and I got a massive poster that was my whole bedroom wall with it as well.
It was the first gig I think the Manics had done since Richie had left as a three-piece.
Incorrect.
Close to.
So I'm going to take your Knebworth and slightly, but not raise you, but parallel place you Oasis and Main Road. Be my first gig, and the Manics were there, and Ocean Colour Scene. I can't remember which the first band I ever saw live was, whether it's Ocean Colour Scene or Manics, but they were both there. Again, 96, probably one of the best years of my life. Finished my GCSEs that year, had no worries for a good 6 months, and the Euros are on, and it was great until they got knocked out. Just hang out with my mates all summer, and it was absolutely glorious. But I didn't go to Knebworth. I think I kind of prefer the fact I didn't go to Knebworth. I think Main Road is like good enough for me because it's a bit more contained and less sprawling. But I had some friends who went to Knebworth, and they said, to a man, that Prodigy is one of the best things I've ever seen live. So that kind of makes me a bit gutted, especially now. There was a super short flash of Liam Howlett in the episode of that. It was a proper blink if you miss him. Not Liam Howlett, Keith Flint, sorry, when I talked about Knebworth. But yeah, I'm from Manchester, big Oasis fan, and I was made up this documentary came out and loved it when I saw it in the cinema, and loved it on revisit again. And I forget two things. One, how short their ascendance was to Knebworth, because that's kind of like nonsense. And two, how much they really did lay into each other and other people, and in a way that would just be nowadays like, stop it, like, we're not going to play with you guys anymore. We can't accept your nonsense. But at the time, I found massively hilarious, and was kind of into the rock and roll side of things and throwing stuff out windows. But they're also young.
That's the thing about it. There's that footage of them recounting what it was like to record What's the Story, Morning Glory. And you really get that sense of how young they are, in that this is such an important moment in their career, and they're going to record this follow-up album. And Liam just won't stop acting up. He's just in the pub all the time. He's just causing absolute chaos. And you can see that it's really stressful for Noel. And he's thinking we could absolutely blow this moment, because Liam's just sort of too bored here, drifting around when he's not needed, when he's not singing. And all of us, whether or not we were Oasis fans, heard that album so much that, and it will be played and continue to be played a lot, I think, for years to come. And it's just amazing, isn't it, when you see the sort of chaotic conditions that some of these incredibly famous albums were made under. It's fascinating.
I found it, the first thing is, the chaos surrounding What's the Story, Morning Glory specifically, but also how quickly they got these things done, especially in a time where there's no kind of, very little limited digital recording. The fact that Liam could just hear the song once and like put those vocals down, because no matter what you think of him, his vocals are impressively sneery, and they get the crowd going and they get you to sing along in a way that Noel's voice is good, but they just don't really do so. And that caliber of a frontman is really kind of potent. But to be able to just do that once, listen to a song once and lay that down, and then he's off to the pub for the rest of the day, to me is like insanity. But Helen, I know you're very much a Damon Albarn gang kid. What were your thoughts on Oasis?
Yeah, so I was very much a Blur fan, but I do think like Definitely Maybe is a fantastic album, and there's lots on What's the Story, Morning Glory that I do really enjoy as well. Didn't get to see them live, sadly. I remember the tickets going on sale, and yeah, the places that you could kind of like queue to get them were not Burton-on-Trent, so it was something that I sadly missed out on. I kind of vaguely knew this documentary was around, but I'd never seen it. But I mean, those two, they're funny fuckers, aren't they? Just so funny. Poor old Peggy, like she just sounds like an absolute legend, but having to bring up those two, and there was another Gallagher as well, but
Paul.
Yeah. So it's hilarious just kind of listening to them, and Noel's hate of Phil Collins is super, super funny. And I really enjoyed kind of like looking back at all the kind of 90s TV shows that they were on. And yeah, the kind of like from them being kind of spotted by Alan McGee to being kind of one of the biggest bands in the planet, like it's such a short one. They just went from sneaking themselves into gigs in Edinburgh to basically just being everywhere. And like watching this, I can't believe that they ended up lasting for so long that they did, considering already they've released one album and they can't even be in the same room together. And the Whiskey A Go-Go show, where they're basically all on crystal meth and completely playing different songs, like that just wouldn't happen now. Like, could you imagine if you paid like 50 quid to go to Brixton Academy and the band came out and they were playing completely different songs to each other? People would be getting refunds, they'd be complaining at different times. I mean,
I think sometimes artists get away with a lot more than you think. And
Liam Gallagher lot just going, I'm not going to sing any more songs, and Noel finishing them for them. Imagine if you went to see a band now and the lead singer was like, I can't be arsed anymore. See ya. Like, it just wouldn't happen. Like all those people wanting to sue Madonna for turning up late. Like you just like back then you'd be like, oh, it was really funny. Liam Gallagher, he was so fucked that he left.
That's what I mean. When I heard those
through.
stories in the news, I was like, that sounds piss funny. I wish I'd seen that. But yeah, now just you're talking about Madonna. The artist I was thinking of was Lauryn Hill. When I saw her live, she'd turned up like nearly 2 hours late, and half the crowd was like had left. I don't know what they were thinking, but when she turned up, she was like astonishing. I was end of my tether by the time she came onto stage, though. So I think you probably would still get that, and people like Guns N' Roses still have that kind of tendency to turn up late and be a bit nobbidous, but also can perform if they really want to. But anyway, back to Oasis. The thing that keeps me still coming back to Oasis is basically Noel Gallagher, and how every time I hear him in an interview, he cracks me up. He's just got like he's just a super funny, super dry, super honest guy that lays into people in a way which is not mean, but also very truthful, in a way that I find like Ricky Gervais, he's like, I lay into everyone, but also I'm like, dude, you're a bit of a knobhead with it as well. Noel Gallagher is just a really candid guy and naturally funny in a way that I find bizarre for someone who comes from like just Manchester and super dry wit, super funny. And also he's made these incredible songs, which I'm just like in awe in whenever I hear Live Forever. I'm just like taken back to 1995, The latter albums, less of a fan of, in all honesty, but you got 2 amazing albums there in the space of 3 years.
Something that he says in it that is very honest, which really stuck with me, was how he said he'd write these lyrics at 3 a.m. when he was off his face. They were just like a stream of consciousness. And then months later, to see thousands of people in a crowd sing them back to you. I was thinking, people write stuff and they redraft and they agonize over it for years and years, and then you have these instances of someone just jotting something down and it gets turned into something then that for whatever reason, resonates with such a massive group of people, and then continues to, particularly in a city like Manchester, you know, you hear the music so much, and so many people of different ages will just know all the words to all of these songs. And yeah, it's just a really interesting thing about which little bits of art stick in people's minds for whatever reason. So unpredictable sometimes.
It makes me think about Lennon and McCartney, how they would, in their most prolific days, they produce a song a day. They just get together. Out to the end of it pops like a song. But like you say, Noel would do these things by himself. The fact he pulled out Supersonic out of his arse when they were supposed to be recording Bring It On Down, and Tony McCarroll couldn't get it together and get the drum beats there, so he pulled out Supersonic, which is still probably my favourite Oasis song. I'm glad that the film's named after Supersonic, is named Supersonic. But that's exactly what I mean. It's just, we can't get this right. Here's another song. Let's do that one. I'm like, well, that's the best one. So there's one thing we should say. I don't know if Helen, if you remember this, we've had the director of Supersonic on our podcast before.
Matt Whitecross.
Matt Whitecross, yeah. I contacted Matt beforehand. Said, hey Matt, how are you? Someone has chosen Supersonic for their film and Flixwatcher that we should be recording this evening. To his response was, no way, that's so cool. I'm like, I think you've done way cooler things in your life, such as make the documentary Supersonic in the first place. But he says, haha, can't wait to hear the show. And so be on your best behaviour, guys. I know it's halfway through already and we're recording it.
I had an interview with him, and he said that he recorded a fantastic interview with Johnny Marr for the documentary that had to be cut out.
Yeah.
And so I would love it if that footage resurfaced. I really enjoyed listening to Johnny Marr talking about how he mentored Noel Gallagher to play the guitar. Apparently that's what happened. So yeah, I'd really love to hear that interview.
Because I mean, being a guitarist myself, or playing guitar, one of the things I was thinking of was he probably wasn't that good a guitarist when they started Oasis. But quite quickly, if you're just rehearsing every day for a year, then you do become really good at something quite quick. Well, you do get to a stage where you're like, he was voted one of the top 30 best guitarists in music. So I'd love to hear that interview with Johnny Marr, because Johnny Marr is definitely one of those guitarists which is very well lauded as a naturally gifted, phraseology and everything being superb. So I'd love to hear that. I know Johnny Marr gave Noel one of his guitars and said, like, here it is, you play that, kid, and you take it from there. So Matt, if you're listening, please unveil that interview. I'd love to hear it.
I was just going to say that watching this, it's very, very clear from the start that the person making it has a lot of love for the band, and it kind of has so many nice little flourishes to it in the way information is presented that just is outside of like the bog standard doc style. So yeah, it's definitely looks like it would have been a fun one to work on, and something that is obviously a band that he loves very much.
I'm imagining it being like Spinal Tap in the way that the interactions between them, the kind of love and hate elements to it, and the fact that even when they're arguing, it's like, I hate you, but I love you, and that kind of stuff. I mean, I had a younger brother as well, and it's probably quite easy to see that going on with that kind of punch you and then apologise and be very kind and afterwards, and seeing what these two did. And one of the things that you kind of forget really when you think about this, and as you talked about the time that went so quickly from them signing with Creation up to Knebworth, and then the hype around the album that came out afterwards. And when they talked about, at the time they were thinking, should this be it? Do we give up and go home and this be the kind of end of it all at Knebworth? And you kind of think, how could you top that? And I know that the next album was very hyped and not a bad album, but definitely nothing compared to the other two. And then after that, other than a couple of odd bits here and there, it was kind of downhill, but that's just nature and you can't keep that going. But I think that was kind of it. You see the heights that they hit in that couple of year period. And looking back now, you kind of think some of the points they raised were different. It's hard to see that kind of buzz around a band now. Bear in mind, I'm in my mid-40s. It's hard to get that excited about Taylor Swift, for example. So I'll leave it there.
But there's many people in their mid-40s who I've tried to get into Taylor Swift, and it just hasn't resonated with me yet. Maybe one day it'll hit me. But that was my nearest kind of comparison for nowadays. Oh, in fact, I was thinking like Lady Gaga, where she just came out of nowhere and was everywhere. And I was like, how have you done this? But then you forget that some bands, some people some artists could just appear out of nowhere and be all over the place. But Taylor Swift has worked hard for a long, long time to get there, hasn't she? So I think she's got a longevity that other people won't have to her.
Yeah, it wasn't an overnight thing.
One thing you said there, Rich, which I want to pick up on, was you said Noel punched Liam, but also you forget the cricket bat around the head, which for me would be like, maybe I need to leave the band. I know you're my brother, but you've just twatted me in the face with a cricket bat.
Brotherly love.
Well, that's the thing with siblings. It's so interesting because you do have that thing sometimes between siblings where there's that kind of feeling of competition where the sort of struggle to share. Because, like, as you said earlier on, Kobe, it's absolutely undeniable that, Liam's the frontman and he's very good at that. And that Noel's better at kind of, writing the song. But you can see that there is that sort of mounting struggle to kind of accept, like, who might be best at what. Because the point where Liam says, well, I was there to sing the songs. And then suddenly Noel started saying, I want to sing some of these songs. I don't know about you guys, but I did kind of think, yeah, I sort of understand why Liam's kind of annoyed about that. Because I think that it should be Liam singing the majority of these songs. I think he is the person that should be fronting the band. And it is sort of slightly strange, this feeling of Noel kind of being maybe a little bit threatened by the fact that Liam's got this sort of undeniable, sort of swagger to him that people find appealing. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I thought it was quite nice. He was honest about it, saying, look, he wears clothes better than me. He's a bit taller. He's got that swagger. So in amongst the, baseball bats, cricket bats to the face, there was that recognition that is underpinned by jealousy, but the recognition is definitely still there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the bit where Noel's talking about how he's a cat and Liam's a dog, and essentially he never really got over Liam pissing on his cassette player or something. But I Noel knows that Liam is cooler than he is, and that I think that is essentially why he got really annoyed. He wanted to be he wrote the songs. He could also sing them as well. And he wasn't the front man. And I think that is always going to be in the back. And you always read these stories and I wonder how true they are. But each time I read it, the amount of money that Noel's been offered for an Oasis reunion just keeps going up and up and up and up. And he's like, no, I'm all right.
It must be massive, mustn't it?
Yeah. He's like, no, I'm fine. I'm just going to carry on singing my songs and singing the Oasis songs that I wrote. Don't need to reform. Don't need Liam anymore.
Before we go to scores, we've talked about Noel and Liam. Obviously, they are the band. But also, it's interesting that, wasn't it Bonehead that got the band together in the first place? And we should Bonehead, Gwigsy and Tony McCarroll initially before we went to Alan White. It was good to hear from those guys, I thought, because they're always in the kind of background. Bonehead was always an interesting character to me because he was quote unquote just the rhythm player, but he seemed as maniacal as the Gallaghers in a way.
They're all animals.
Well, Gwigsy wasn't, was he? He was like, I can't
apart from him, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the thing at the time with Gwigsy. You didn't really know. I guess these days, mental health and that kind of stuff is more openly talked about. And the fact that then, and this was, footage from 95, 96 of them laughing about him needing a break, taking a holiday. Oh, yeah. You're exhausted, go and have a lie down, that kind of stuff. And I think now you look at it and go, wow, imagine that. And at the time, that's just what they were like and what culture was like. And I guess to look at that with modern eyes now is fascinating because, if you're imagining having to go on stage every night, go on tour with these guys and watching all that from essentially a front row seat. And then, especially if you're perhaps more of an introverted kind of character and you're just sitting there going, oh my God, I just want to get paid, play my bass and carry on. And they're beating each other up with cricket bats and or whatever they're doing to each other's cassette players.
Squirting me with a fire extinguisher.
Exactly, just because Man United lost the league that year. Yeah. So it was, that kind of stuff. It was fascinating to see from an obscure point of view that while he was very much part of the band for most of the band's life, he was there and saw all that, and it did take a toll on him as well.
I think another thing was, I remember I read The Enemy every week at that time, got Melody Maker, got Q Magazine, got Vox Magazine, got all these magazines, and remember the story of Gwigsy leaving and Scott McLeod replacing him and then leaving as well. So then to hear how it manifested in documentary in real life, told through their mouths, was super interesting to me. That he just thought, no, you guys are lunatics. I'm going to not be here. I'll see you later. Which is like, wow, that shows testament to like Alan White, who came along afterwards and stuck with it in the face of all the other crazinesses going around him.
Well, yeah, no one spontaneously combusted or anything like that. So it was a nice little segue there.
Should we head to the scores?
Let's go to the scores.
I'm Sam Clements, host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have included fellow Stripped Media family members Martin and Sam from Song by Song, and Kobe from Flixwatcher, and Dave from The Wire Stripped. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
Welcome to the Flixwatcher scores. As always, they're out of 5. You can have decimal places if you wish, and we will start with you, please, Kat, with your recommendability.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 4, I think, because it's a really watchable music documentary and gives you a good sense of the moment in time that Oasis were occupying. Like, it was such a specific sort of culture in the 90s, like that footage of them at the Brits with Noel Gallagher saying to Michael Hutchence,
has-beens shouldn't present awards
to Gunnabys. Yeah. It's just I thought it was really good that they included that clip, actually, because at the time I can remember seeing that as it happened and thinking, oh God, that's just like, it's such a sort of painful thing to see happen live. And so I thought it was really good that they included it, just to kind of like not flatter the Gallagher brothers too much with kind of what they were leaving and what they were taking out. So it's a 4. I think it's a good documentary.
Rich?
I'll give it 4.2. I think that both as a documentary and sort of touching on what Kat said, that kind of time capsule of the early to mid 90s. Again, it's like personal for me. That was me as a teenager, and I think going forward and showing people what a lot of the UK was like, because it also touches on sort of like newspaper tabloid culture as well. And I think that there was a lot there that even if you don't like Oasis, if you like music, you can see what the music industry was like at the time, media, that kind of celebrity culture. I think a lot of people would get a lot of value out of it. I'd quite happily push it towards them, whether they're Oasis, Blur, or who knows what.
Helen?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say no to a 90s indie music documentary. So yeah, there's a lot to enjoy here. I don't know, it's one of those ones where I'm like, would like a 15-year-old who lives on TikTok find this interesting, or would they sort of be like, oh, that's something that my parents and my grandparents used to listen to? Like, I always wonder whether it's going to reach the youth of today in a way that it kind of affected us and completely changed our lives back in the 90s when we didn't have the internet and you had to queue up for tickets.
I know, yeah. When you said queue up for tickets, I was like, what?
I mean, I remember buying tickets over the phone, ringing up and buying tickets and having to borrow a credit card, and they came in the post. But queuing up for tickets and Top of the Pops, like watching bands like that on like primetime TV.
Helen, I'm going to give you Top of the Pops. I'm going to raise you the word.
Oh yeah, that was like.
No, well, the word was on
obviously
TFI Friday was great, but the word with all its kind of weird neon backgrounds, just that was ultra 90s. That was TFI Fridays was like 90s at 9.5. The word is 90s at 11 to stupid.
And so Zoe Ball was wearing like a really weird hat in it. So yeah, for me it's like proper nostalgia. How that would translate to recommending it to people who weren't there for it, I don't really know. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And yeah, as I said, it's got enough kind of life to it that it stops it from being a very kind of like bog standard format to it, it looks pretty good as well. So I'm going to give it a 4.5. And that's coming from a Blur fan as well.
One of my best friends, his kid is about 15 and he's massively into Liam Gallagher. And we don't fully understand it because my friend, he never really liked indie music in that way. So the fact that his kid, although his kid is a really big City fan, so that might be a lot of where it comes from. But, he's seen Liam and Noel more times than I've seen them live. So I'm like, fair play to you, mate. So there's a little island Oasis, a little Oasis fans that we don't know about. Yeah, I'm going to go. I think a good music documentary really does grab me more so than I think a biopic has to be absolutely phenomenal to grab me. And, I'm looking at the Queen one, for example, versus Rocket Man. Rocket Man I thought was astonishing. Queen one I didn't think was so. But Rocket Man, I think like that's just an amazing film. Well done. But music documentaries, I can watch them day in, day out. And I think they're super, super fun to watch. And there's time capsules as someone if you're into music, as someone if you're not into the music, and then have a watch. So I'm going to give this a 5 because I think, look, this is me, Kobe Monarch at age 16, down to a T. I knew all the stories anyway, but to see them come to life, and I'll tell everyone to watch it. Kat, repeat viewing score.
So I think I'm going to give it a 3.5, just because I think that the relationship between the brothers is really entertaining to watch, and it's a good music documentary. But I wasn't an Oasis fan in terms of the Britpop bands I used to like.
Who are your Britpop bands then?
My Britpop bands were
nice.
Pulp and Kinnicky were my main two. So so they were who I liked at the time. So the footage of Oasis I never find sort of electrifying in the way that I would like if it was a documentary about Prince and you had footage of Prince and I'd watch it again and again. But it's still, it's still solid. So 3.5.
Was that Lauren Laverne's band Kinnicky?
Yeah. It was indeed, yeah. They were fantastic. I had a huge Kinnicky poster on my wall.
Rich?
I will go for a 4. I think this is the second time that I've seen it, and it's the sort of thing that I would come back to semi-regularly. I think I'll watch it again in the future, maybe not for 2 or 3 years minimum, but I think as a callback to my youth. Again, we were probably in the same year at school, Kobe. I did my GCSEs that year as well. So I'll come back to it again, not for a while, but just to remind...
Hold on. You said mid-40s. I don't think I'm mid-40s yet.
I feel older. Too many Alco Pops in 1996, I think. Too many hooches.
Mad Dog 2020 was...
Oh, yes. But I think, I'll definitely come back to it again, but not for a couple of years. So I'll give it a 4.
Helen?
That's what I'd like, a good pulp documentary. I'd love that.
Why not?
I saw them for the first time this year and I loved every second of it. It's quite long, this one. It's nearly 2 hours, which is quite long for a music documentary. There is a Blur documentary called Star Shaped that came out in the early 90s, which I have seen quite a lot. Like... a lot. This isn't going to be one of those for me. I enjoyed it.
What about Montage of Heck? How many times have you seen that?
Oh, I've only seen that once at the cinema.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the Star Shape one a lot of times, and that is shorter as well. So I enjoyed it. Whether I'm going to watch it again, probably not. So I'll give it a 2.
Traditionally in the Flixwatcher studios, documentaries do get a lower viewing score, which typically makes sense. Yeah, this is the second time I've seen this. First time was in a cinema. Loved it then. I wasn't planning on watching it again because I thought it was great in the cinema, so I didn't think I was going to relive the fun in it. But outside of the music stuff, there was all the interviews really worked, and as Helen said, the stylistic choices worked. Surprised me again when I watched it. So as it's a documentary, I don't think I'll be watching that often, but I will look forward to when I do watch it again. So I'm going to give that a 3.2. Small screen score. Kat?
So I think I'm going to give it a 5 because I think this works brilliantly on the small screen. Music documentaries on the small screen are basically my favourite thing to watch on a Friday night. So works brilliantly.
Rich?
I'll give it a 4. I think, again, I didn't see it at the cinema, but I think I'm so used to... I associate the 90s with a sort of 14-inch portable TV and, the quality... You're not getting your 4Ks or any of that stuff. It's the sort of stuff you get on Channel 4 and a portable aerial, out of a coat hanger, that sort of stuff.
The sort of stuff you get on Channel 4, the word, basically. That really made me, it was painfully 90s, the words.
All they needed was Euro trash afterwards or something
Lord.
like that. But yeah, I'll go for 4. I think it's a very small screen for me. I didn't get to see it at the cinema, and yeah, watching it on Netflix in HD just feels weird. Watching that kind of shaky camcorder footage.
Helen.
Yeah, I've only ever seen this at home, and yeah, I enjoyed it. So yeah, 5.
I'm going to join Rich on a 4. I really enjoyed it in cinema, and it's one of those things where sometimes I have to convince myself to get off my arse and go to cinema to watch music documentaries, because I tend to enjoy it a lot more. Not Get Back, but the Beatles documentary that Ron Howard directed was awesome in the cinema, and then ended up with the Candlestick Park. Is it Candlestick Park? It ended up with a live gig, which is only like 10, what was like a short amount of songs, and that was amazing to see at the cinema. So I think I need to try and watch more music documentaries in the cinema, because I think you just get especially if the sound's done well, it just really does work. But it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be on the small screen. So yeah, 4. Engagement score, Kat.
So yeah, I think I'll give it a 3, because I think that it has, once you turn it on, you want to keep watching it because of the dynamic between the brothers. They reminded me a bit this time of the relationship between Joe and Amy March in Little Women. Maybe they should have called the documentary Little Men, I don't know. But the only thing is, though, I might turn it off after a while, because I think that's the thing with Oasis, as with so many bands, the bigger they get, in some ways, the less interesting it gets. Like, particularly with Oasis, they became so big so quickly that I can remember sort of at the time, their logo was almost like another sort of sports brand. It became seen everywhere. Everyone was wearing the T-shirt. Like, you were so sort of submerged in it that it became a bit much. So I think in some ways the most interesting bit of the documentary is towards the beginning. So I might turn it off after a while and go and do something else. So 3.
Rich.
I'm going to say 4.5. I think because I was that Oasis fan, I remember the T-shirt, being everywhere, and I having one, and while it was different because it wasn't like a gig, so like Stop Making Sense for Talking Heads, that was a gig that you're watching in various parts. This was an origin story, how they made it big, and then there was, from this film's point of view anyway, the finale of Knebworth, and then I think they did a very good decision in cutting it off there. And I think seeing that rise and the tribulations they have along the way, but I was really engaged. I mean, I know I was a fan and I was there for some of it, and I really did feel like it was entertaining, and I was going along with it. So yeah, 4.5 for me.
Helen.
Yeah, I could leave it a 4. It's one of those ones, we know how it ends, so there's no kind of surprises along the way. And yeah, there's kind of like, there's the bit where you're sort of waiting for them to get to Knebworth, because it teases it at the start and you're like, come on, when are we going to get to Knebworth? When are we going to get to it? So yeah, it's a solid 4 for engagement.
Yeah, I'll join the 4 party there. I mean, it's just, like I say, I knew all the stories anyway, and it was great ticking off in the cinema and then recalling them and seeing how much I'd forgotten between both viewings was really kind of fascinating to me. So because it won't be a frequent rewatch, but when I do rewatch it, I think I'll always be engaged to kind of relive my youth and those places. And also because I was from quite close to I grew up quite close to where they were from in Burnage. I was like the next kind of village along. I knew some of the places, like Mr. Sifters, for example, been there to get the records. So I always feel like I was like the bits at the start a bit more when I know the places that they've hung around in and been to and kicked around in. So that gives us an overall score of 3.99, 375, just a slither away from 4.
Still high though.
The smallest slither away from 4. But that is the repeat viewing score with the documentaries. So, guys, thank you so much. This has been great to talk about Supersonic. When you guys suggested it, I was like, yes, it is about time I see this again. Can you sign off by telling everyone where we can find you, about your podcast, and we'll say sayonara and goodbye to all the listeners.
So our podcast, Don't You Want Me, is on Instagram and on Twitter. Come and find us there and come and say hello. And we'd love you to listen to some of the episodes. We've done everything from the Thomas Crown Affair to Gregory's Girl to Die Hard to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So many. And yeah, and I'm also Kitty Costanza on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, I'm always there on Don't You Want Me, normally chucking in something about how great Die Hard was and compare everything to that. But I'm on Instagram and Twitter, or X, as Fantana275 if you want to come and tell me how rubbish Oasis really were, and that Blur or your indie Britpop band of choice were better, and I'll probably agree with you.
Well, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming
Bye.
on again. Bye.
Bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes and Rockwood Audio's editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.